Question one is, how can I stand up for myself when I'm regularly asked to do non-promotable work? So we're going to break it down of like, this is how your nervous system, like thinking about the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, like how that is triggered by thoughts that we have. And a lot of them are ones we don't even realize we're having that have a lot to do with being socialized as female. There's a bunch of things that are going on when you're saying, how can I stand up for myself when I'm regularly asked to do non-promotable work, right? So one thing epigenetically that's going to happen in any of these situations is think back to, hunter-gatherer cave days, right? Where if like you were left out of the community, if you were ejected from the tribe, you were going to freeze to death, starve to death, or get eaten by a lion, right? And all of that is still part of our bodies today. So this desire to be likable, this desire to be a part of the community, right, is like deeply, deeply ingrained. And we can't pretend that that doesn't exist, but it's only one little teeny tiny part of this. So when we're talking about what sort of nervous system responses are going on in this situation where you're worried, when you're trying to figure out how do I stand up for myself when I'm asked to do non-promotable work. So first there's a fawn response that's going on, right? This is people pleasing. So I'm saying FAWN, fawn response. And people pleasing obviously is prioritizing everyone else's needs above your own, right? And then there's also a freeze response that's going on, like where you feel just stuck. And that's self-doubt, right? So there's the fawn response of like, I just want to do what people ask me to do, to be nice, to be likable. And then there's the freeze response of self-doubt of what will happen if I do say no, right? Okay, so why do we have these worries at all? So first and foremost, and you'll always hear me talk about this, right? People socialized as women are taught that we're responsible for other people's comfort. So if we're going to make someone uncomfortable by either saying no or asking someone else to do it, right? In this case of like, maybe you should take the notes, Chad, right? Like Chad never takes the notes. And so, but we're worried because we feel responsible. We're socialized, we're validated and praised for taking care of other people's needs, for making them comfortable. And the result of that is that we don't learn to look inward for the answer of, am I valuable? Am I worthy? We only get that from other people. So if we feel like we're going to let other people down, if we feel like we're going to make other people uncomfortable, we're going to make other people maybe not like us as much, then we're not going to get any of that validation and praise that we're doing it right. So that's always underlying like so many of these things that we're talking about. So some things that might come up are thoughts like, if I don't take the notes, I won't be a team player. If I don't take the lunch order, right, someone else will have to do it and they'll be super annoyed, right? Like, what are those things that are going on in there? Another thought that might come in here is like, I can't let them down, right? This is where my people pleasing came in my career so much of like, oh, I can't, like, I owe them so much, particularly when my round as a co-founder before was like, I just really felt so responsible. Like these people are coming and they're working, they gave up other potential jobs to come build my dream and I owe them so much and I can't let them down. And I really, really burned myself out in a different way in that job, or someone else will have to do it, right? And they'll not enjoy it. And that'll be terrible for them. And I don't want them to feel bad, right? So I'm just going to do it, right? It's, a lot of times it's like, it's easier to just do it than to say no, right? This is how we get into this thing where we end up, we're like, why am I always taking the notes? Because it's not just that I take the notes in the meeting, it's that everybody else gets to go back to their desk and start doing promotable work. And I go back to my desk and type up the notes and send them out to everybody, right? Like it's not just the labor during the meeting of taking the notes, but it's everything that's happening afterwards and the opportunity cost of those actions. That's why it's really, really important that we start distributing the non-promotable tasks, right? Like we are not uniquely qualified. We don't have a particular chromosome or anything in our DNA that says I'm better at taking notes, or I should plan the happy hour, or I'm good at taking lunch orders, or whatever all of the things are that we end up doing, right? Oh, I'll plan the offsite, right? All of the, like, there's no particular like anything between, no gender has like any sort of special skill when it comes to those sorts of things. Okay, so what are the feelings that we're having when this is happening? So there's a fear element. We're afraid of what other people will think, right? It's back to that. I'm afraid that they're not going to like me. I'm afraid that they're going to think poorly of me. I'm afraid they're going to think I'm selfish, right? And that when we start thinking about the selfish part, we also start thinking about guilt. Like, oh, well, I'll feel bad. Like, I don't like taking the notes and typing them up, but no one else will want to either. And I'll feel guilty when they have to do it and they'll feel unhappy about it. So I'll just take on all of that discomfort for myself, right? We fall into that people pleasing. And then we also, in this question, there is an element of doubt, right? How can I stand up for myself? Right? There's almost that element of like, should I be standing up for myself? Am I doing the right thing? Is it going to look weird? Do other people stand up for themselves and say, I don't want to take the notes, or I don't want to do the lunch order, or whatever it is, right? So those are three really, really powerful feelings when you think about it, right? Fear, doubt, and guilt. Those are all kind of like paralyzing, anxiety producing feelings. So we can't pretend that those aren't happening in here. So, but when you think about it, come back to where the socialization hits our nervous system. Of course, we worry about being likable when we won't feel valued and worthy unless other people are telling us that we're doing a good job. Like, that makes sense that we would worry about this, right? Of course, we doubt ourselves when we live in a society where we're constantly told we're too much or not enough. Right? There's no like sort of happy medium. We can't ever seem to be doing it exactly right. And so, of course, that's going to create a lot of doubt because you're like, is it like this? Is it like this? Is it like this? Like, what's the right amount? Right? Of course, we're going to doubt ourselves. And of course, we feel guilty when we are socialized from a very young age to believe that we're responsible for other people's comfort, right? What's really bizarre in all of that is that we're not socialized to believe we're responsible for our own comfort. Our own comfort is optional. And that's freaking lame. All right. So how does this show up? Like what happens in our lives? So what we end up doing is we do things so that other people won't be uncomfortable with no concern for our own happiness and comfort. Or we let other people decide things for us, or we do more than our fair share of non-promotable work because we're so worried about being liked, right? I think a lot of folks can kind of relate to this feeling. So here's my tips for you. I call them and statements. And this is where we add some nuance to sort of the judgment of ourselves, the idea of like, worrying about like, are we going to be likable? Are we going to upset other people? Are we whatever, right? Is try thoughts like this on. So I can be a team player and not take the notes. I can be great to work with and not take the lunch orders, right? I can be a solid contributor and not fill in the blank, right? Of like whatever other thing, right? So this is how you stand up for yourself. This is how you stand up for yourself in your own mind, is that you tell yourself it's going to be fine, right? We can use and statements in any aspect of our life. And actually in this second question, I'm going to give you, or maybe I changed it. So there's a few more, right? Like I can be a great parent and not yell at my kids sometimes, right? I can be a great partner and like forget our anniversary, whatever it is, right? Like, but just thinking about like, you have to give yourself permission because remember, we're in that too much and not enough, right? And when we don't give ourselves permission to be human, then this is where we run around people pleasing because we're spending so much time trying to get that validation and praise and other people to tell us that we're doing it right.